It was the moment every fan of Little People, Big World had been waiting for. A moment of triumph, of liberation. We all watched as Amy Roloff, after years of emotional turmoil and uncertainty, finally sold her portion of Roloff Farms. The cameras captured her smile, a mix of relief and excitement for a future she alone would control. She celebrated her financial independence, a multi-million dollar nest egg that was supposed to be her fortress of solitude, her security for the rest of her days. She thought she was finally in control of her own destiny, holding the pen to write the next chapter of her life. In reality, she was handing the keys to her future, her entire fortune, to a reckless gambler hiding in plain sight. She thought she had bought her freedom. What she had actually done was buy a one-way ticket to financial ruin, and the man sitting right beside her, smiling for the cameras, was the one punching the ticket. Before we expose the devastating paper trail and the secret deal that brought Amy Roloff to the brink of total collapse, we need you to become part of this investigation. If you believe the truth needs to come out, hit that subscribe button for LPBW update right now, ring that notification bell, and give this video a powerful thumbs up. You are not going to want to miss a single shred of the evidence we are about to reveal. The story the network doesn't want you to see starts right now. To truly understand the magnitude of this betrayal, we must first go back to the numbers. This wasn't just a simple property sale. This was the culmination of a lifetime of work. The public figures, the ones discussed on the show and in the press, were staggering. Initial buyouts for sections of the farm were reported to be in the high six figures, close to $700,000. But the final sale, the big one, the sale of the main house and the surrounding acreage, pushed Amy's total compensation into the multi-million-dollar stratosphere. Conservative estimates based on property values and insider whispers place her total buyout well over $3 million, with some sources suggesting it could have been closer to $5 million when all was said and done. Let that number sink in. $5 million. For most people, that's not just a nest egg. It's a dynastic fortune. It's the kind of money that ensures not only your own comfort for the rest of your life, but the security of your children and your children's children. It was Amy's legacy, earned through decades of sweat, tears, and raising a family in the public eye. This was her reward. It was meant to be the foundation for a peaceful, secure, and joy-filled final act of her life with her new husband, Chris Marek. Instead, that foundation was built on sand, and the man she trusted most was about to unleash a tsunami. The signs were there, cleverly hidden in plain sight, scattered across recent seasons of the show. We, the viewers, were so focused on the family drama, the tension between Matt and the kids, that we missed the subtle, insidious groundwork being laid by Chris. Think back. How many scenes have we witnessed where Chris is on his phone, pacing in the background, his voice low and urgent? He'd wave a dismissive hand at Amy, saying, "Just a work thing, honey. Big deal in the works." He'd end the call with a cryptic, "I'll make it happen," or "The investors are getting antsy." At the time, it seemed innocuous, just a man dedicated to his real estate career. But our sources, who have been re-examining this footage with a forensic eye, now believe this was the first phase of his plan. These weren't just random business calls, this was a performance. He was creating a narrative for Amy, planting the seeds of a massive, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that was just on the horizon. He needed to establish himself in her mind, not just as her loving husband, but as a financial wizard, a man who could turn millions into tens of millions with a single brilliant move. He would talk vaguely at the dinner table about the Oregon property market, about how the real money isn't in selling single-family homes, it's in development. He would mention friends of friends who got in on the ground floor of a project and were now retired, living on yachts. It was a slow, methodical campaign of suggestion. He was building a mythology, around this secret deal, making it sound both exclusive and foolproof. He'd say things like, "Babe, you worked so hard for that farm money. We need to make that money work for us now. We can't just let it sit in some low-yield savings account. That's what old people do." He framed caution as cowardice and risk, as a thrilling, necessary step towards an even more luxurious future. He made Amy feel that her desire for simple security was naive, that she wasn't thinking big enough. He was a master of psychological manipulation, preying on her trust and her relative inexperience with managing such a vast sum of money. She had run a farm, raised a family, and navigate a complex public life. But the world of high-risk, multi-million-dollar property development, that was his world, and he was inviting her in, promising her riches beyond her wildest dreams, all while knowing he was leading her off a cliff. So, what was this grand, once-in-a-lifetime investment that Chris Merrick was so secretive about? Our investigation has pulled back the curtain on the entire scheme, and the details are even more shocking than you can imagine. This wasn't a blue chip stock or a portfolio of reliable rental properties. This was a pure, unadulterated gamble. The project was named the Whispering Tides Estates of Tillamook, a proposed luxury waterfront condo development located on a remote, windswept stretch of the Oregon coast. On paper, and specifically in the glossy, professionally printed prospectus Chris presented to Amy, it looked like a paradise in the making. The artist's renderings depicted sleek, glass-walled buildings rising majestically over the Pacific, with private docks, a five-star restaurant, and an infinity pool that seemed to merge with the ocean itself. The brochure was filled with buzzwords like unparalleled coastal living, exclusive enclave, and guaranteed return on investment. It was designed to dazzle, to overwhelm, and to short-circuit any rational doubt. But it was all a fantasy. Chris, leveraging his real estate background, allegedly presented Amy with what we can now expose as doctored market analysis and wildly overinflated projections. He showed her charts with hockey stick graphs pointing to the sky, predicting that wealthy buyers from California and Seattle were desperate to escape the cities and would pay a premium for this kind of remote luxury. He claimed to have a waiting list of pre-screened buyers and that the project was already 50% soft sold. Our sources within the Oregon real estate community, however, paint a very different picture. They confirmed that the location was notoriously difficult to develop, plagued by restrictive zoning laws, environmental protection regulations, and a lack of local infrastructure. The market for multi-million-dollar condos in that specific isolated area was practically non-existent. One veteran developer we spoke to, who wished to remain anonymous for fear of professional reprisal, called the project a complete pipe dream and financial suicide. He told us anyone with half a brain in Oregon real estate knew that project was a house of cards. The land was unstable, the permits were a nightmare, and the target market just wasn't there. To sink millions into that, you'd have to be either a fool or a con man. Chris Merrick, a man with decades of experience, was no fool. He knew exactly what he was doing. He was selling Amy a story, a beautiful, compelling, and ultimately worthless lie, and he was using her entire fortune as the capital to fund it. If you think this is just speculation, you are wrong. Talk is cheap, but a paper trail is forever. Through a series of confidential leaks from sources close to the financial collapse, we have uncovered the documents that prove, beyond a shadow of a doubt, how Amy Roloff's fortune was systematically siphoned away. The centerpiece of this deception was a shell corporation, a legal entity created by Chris Merrick just weeks after Amy's final farm payment cleared. The company was named with a sickening touch of ego, CM Developments, LLC. A shell corporation is a classic tool for those looking to obscure financial transactions and shield themselves from personal liability. It's a legal ghost. Chris allegedly explained it to Amy as a smart standard business practice. "It's for tax purposes, babe," he probably said. "It protects our personal assets, like the house, from any business stuff. It's just how the big players do it." He made it sound like a shield for her, when in reality, it was a shield for him. We have obtained a copy of the investment agreement between Amy Roloff and CM Developments, LLC. It is a dense 20-page document filled with impenetrable legal jargon, but two things stand out with horrifying clarity. The first is Amy's signature, penned in her familiar cursive at the bottom of the last page. The second is the wire transfer authorization, a separate addendum that details the movement of funds. There are two transfers listed. The first, for an astonishing $2 million, was dated just 1 week after the LLC was formed. The second transfer, for another $1.5 million, occurred 2 months later. In total, $3.5 million of Amy Roloff's farm money, the money that was supposed to be her security, her legacy, was signed over not to a diversified portfolio or a secure fund, but to her husband's brand new single asset shell corporation with no history, no other investors, and no oversight. She signed it all away, trusting the man who slept next to her every night. The documents are irrefutable. They are a cold, hard testament to a catastrophic lapse in judgment, fueled by misplaced love and expert manipulation. The house of cards built with Amy's money was destined to fall. And when it fell, it didn't just collapse, it imploded, leaving a crater of debt and a public record of the entire disaster. The Whispering Tides Estates project was doomed from the start. As our real estate sources predicted, the permits were denied due to environmental impact concerns. The initial seed money, Amy's money, was burned through at an alarming rate, spent on exorbitant fees for architects, lawyers, and lobbyists who all promised they could make the problems go away, all while cashing massive checks. The waiting list of eager buyers that Chris had boasted about, it was pure fiction. Not a single pre-sale contract was ever signed. As the money dried up, construction stalled before a single foundation was even poured. The project was bleeding cash, and the creditors began to circle. This led to the next bombshell we uncovered: the public bankruptcy filings. When CM Developments LLC inevitably became insolvent, it was forced to file for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. And because this is a public court proceeding, the documents are available for anyone who knows where to look. We have reviewed the complete case file from the United States Bankruptcy Court for the District of Oregon. It reads like a financial autopsy. The filing lists the company's assets as virtually zero, just a worthless plot of undevelopable land. But the list of liabilities, the list of people and companies who are owed money, is pages long. And they're listed under unsecured creditors is a name that will send a chill down the spine of every LPW fan: Amy J. Roloff. Her investment is listed as a total loss. Gone. Every single cent. The court documents officially categorize her $3.5 million investment as unrecoverable. There is no bailout coming. There is no insurance policy. The money has vanished into the black hole of a failed business venture, and the public record confirms it. It is the ultimate nightmare, codified in legal language and stamped by a federal court. As the financial pressure mounted, long before the bankruptcy became public, the cracks began to show in Amy and Chris's personal life. And while they might have been able to hide the business dealings from the TLC cameras, they couldn't hide the consequences from their family. This brings us to perhaps the most heartbreaking piece of evidence we've uncovered: a series of worried text messages from Zach Roloff to his mother, Amy. A source close to the family, deeply concerned about Amy's well-being, shared these exchanges with us, and they paint a picture of growing alarm. The first message, sent about 3 months ago, is simple. Zach writes, "Hey, Mom, Saw you listed Grandma's old dining set on Facebook Marketplace. Is everything okay? Amy's reply is evasive. Oh, just decluttering, making room for some new things Chris and I bought. You know me. But the selling didn't stop. A week later, another text from Zach. Mom, Tori saw you sold your good china and a bunch of your old jewelry online. We're getting a little worried. Is there something you're not telling us? This time, Amy's response is more defensive. Zachary, I am a grown woman and can sell my own things if I want to. Please do not create drama. Everything is fine. The final text we received is the most telling. It's from Zach, and it's clear his patience is wearing thin. Mom, I'm just going to ask, are you guys in some kind of financial trouble? Selling heirlooms and personal assets like this isn't normal. If you need help, you have to tell us. This isn't just about decluttering anymore. We're your kids. We love you. Please just talk to me. Amy's response to that message was silence. She never wrote back. She couldn't. How could she admit to her son, the one who had his own contentious financial dealings with his father over the farm, that she had lost everything? How could she confess that the inheritance she had promised for her children, the legacy of Roloff Farms, had been gambled away on her new husband's fantasy project? She was trapped in a web of shame and fear, desperately selling off pieces of her past to try and plug the holes in a dam that was already broken, all while trying to maintain the facade that everything was perfectly fine. The official end of the dream came on a cold, rainy Tuesday. The bankruptcy court had finalized its proceedings, the lawyers had stopped calling, and there was nothing left to do. The project was officially dead. That evening, in the home that Amy had so proudly purchased with her newfound independence, Chris Marek was forced to make his confession. There was no more hiding, no more vague promises, no more everything is under control. The lie had finally become too big to maintain. We can only imagine the scene. Amy, perhaps noticing Chris's withdrawn and ashen-faced demeanor for days, finally confronting him. Chris, what is going on? You have to tell me the truth about this investment. And the truth, when it finally came, was a betrayal more profound than she could have ever imagined. He sat her down at their kitchen table and admitted it all. The Whispering Tides Estates was a catastrophic failure. The money, her $3.5 million nest egg, was gone. Every last penny was unrecoverable, consumed by the bankruptcy. But the confession didn't end there. In a stunning, gut-wrenching twist, Chris delivered the final blow. He admitted that as the project was collapsing, he had become desperate. He took out one last massive loan to try and salvage the deal, a Hail Mary attempt to keep it afloat. The lender, however, required significant collateral for such a high-risk loan. CM Developments LLC had no assets, so Chris did the unthinkable. Without Amy's full informed consent, likely burying the details in a stack of papers he told her were just some routine loan documents to sign, he used their own home, Amy's new home, as collateral. He gambled not just her fortune, but the very roof over their heads, on a project he knew was failing. The confession was a moment of pure, devastating betrayal. The man she had built a new life with had not only squandered her past, he had just stolen her future. In that instant, her millionaire status, her security, and her trust were all wiped out, leaving only the terrifying reality of what was to come. Judgment in the world of high-stakes finance is not delivered by a man in a black robe. It's delivered by a courier in a nondescript sedan. About a week after Chris's devastating confession, that judgment arrived. A legal notice, cold and impersonal, was delivered to their front door. It was a formal notice of default from the lender who had provided the final desperate loan for the condo project. The language was stark and brutal. Due to the bankruptcy of CM Developments LLC, the loan was in default, and the full balance, an astronomical sum bloated by penalties and interest, was due immediately. They had 30 days. 30 days to produce hundreds of thousands of dollars they simply did not have. If they failed to pay, the foreclosure process would begin and the bank would seize the property, their home. This was no longer a theoretical financial loss on a balance sheet. This was a ticking clock counting down to their eviction. Imagine Amy's horror holding that piece of paper in her hands. The home she had so lovingly decorated, the place that was supposed to be her safe harbor after the storms of her divorce and the sale of the farm, was now a hostage to her husband's catastrophic failure. The judgment was swift, brutal, and absolute. They were losing everything. The money was gone, and now their home was next. There was no escape clause, no legal loophole to exploit. Chris's signature on that loan document, secured by their property deed, had sealed their fate. The walls of her new life, which she believed were built on a foundation of love and trust, were about to come crumbling down, and she was about to be buried in the rubble. The ruling in the court of common sense and financial reality is painfully clear. Amy Roloff, a woman who just a short time ago was a multi-millionaire, is now not just broke, but deeply in debt. The scale of this financial devastation is difficult to comprehend. It's not just that the farm money is gone, it's that it has been replaced by a mountain of new liabilities. The defaulted loan on their home is a ticking time bomb. Even if they sell the house in a desperate attempt to pay it off, they will likely be left with nothing. Or, worse, still owing the bank a substantial amount. Any remaining assets they have will be targeted by creditors. The financial security she fought for years to achieve has been utterly annihilated. Her children's inheritance, the legacy from the farm that she had always intended for Zach, Jeremy, Molly, and Jacob, has evaporated. It was gambled away in a scheme built on ego and deception. Think of the irony. For years, the narrative on the show has revolved around the fate of the farm and the legacy for the Roloff children. We saw the intense and painful negotiations between Matt and his sons, the drama over who would carry on the family business. All the while, the real financial threat to the family's future wasn't coming from Matt's business decisions, but from the quiet, unassuming man at Amy's side. Chris Marek didn't just lose Amy's money, he effectively erased a significant portion of the Roloff family legacy in one fell swoop. The ruling is in. Amy Roloff has been financially devastated, her life's work turned to dust, all because she trusted the wrong man. She has gone from planning a comfortable retirement to facing the terrifying prospect of starting over from scratch in her 60s with nothing but debt to her name. Faced with utter ruin, a strange and desperate calm settled over Amy and Chris. The panic was still there, churning beneath the surface, but it was quickly superseded by a primal instinct for survival. Their world had been reduced to a single terrifying objective. They had to hide the truth. They had to construct a fortress of lies around their catastrophe because the alternative was unthinkable. The first and most important entity to deceive was TLC. The show, Little People, Big World, was no longer just a television program. It was their only remaining source of income, their last lifeline in a sea of debt. Their contract, like all reality TV contracts, contained clauses about bringing the show and the network into disrepute. A scandal involving a multi-million-dollar fraud, bankruptcy, and impending homelessness was more than enough to trigger those clauses. They knew that if the truth got out, their paychecks would stop, the cameras would disappear, and they would be left with absolutely nothing. And so the great cover-up began. Their lives became a piece of performance art. We are now getting reports from sources on the production crew who, at the time, simply thought the couple was behaving strangely. Now, in the light of these financial revelations, their observations paint a chilling picture. One crew member told us, "We were scheduled to film a segment where Amy and Chris were planning a big celebratory trip to Italy. They were looking at brochures, talking about Tuscan villas and romantic gondola rides, but their eyes were dead. There was this palpable tension in the room. Amy would force a smile for the camera, but the second the director yelled cut, her face would just collapse. Chris was constantly fidgeting, sweating under the lights. He'd snap at the sound guy for moving a cable. We all just thought they'd had a fight, but this was different. It was despair. They were acting out a fantasy life for the cameras, talking about a future they knew would never happen, all while the foreclosure notice sat in a drawer, a time bomb counting down to zero. The deception had to extend beyond the stage scenes. Their entire life had to appear normal, even prosperous. Our insider on the set described another scene that was filmed just last month, a scene so audacious in its dishonesty, it's hard to believe. The premise was Amy and Chris house shopping for a vacation property on the Oregon coast. They walked through a beautiful beach house with a real estate agent, the TLC cameras capturing their every word. Chris, the man who had just bankrupted his wife and was about to lose their primary residence, was the star of this particular charade. He pointed out the investment potential of the property. He talked about market trends and long-term equity. He looked Amy in the eye and said, "Babe, this could be our little getaway, a place for the grandkids. It's important to keep investing in real estate." According to our source, Amy looked like she was going to be physically ill. She could barely speak, offering only one-word answers. She was a hostage in her own life story, forced to play along with the man who had destroyed her for the sake of a paycheck they desperately needed to pay the lawyers who were managing their financial collapse. The lies they had to tell their family were even more complicated and painful. The kids, especially Zach, were not as easily fooled as the television audience. His suspicions, which began with the online sale of heirlooms, only grew as his mom became more distant and evasive. We have learned of a recent explosive confrontation that took place off camera. Zach and Tori went over for dinner, hoping to get a straight answer from Amy. They found her and Chris in the middle of a tense discussion, which immediately stopped when they walked in. Zach, tired of the games, confronted them directly. "Okay, what is going on?" he demanded. "You're selling everything, you look stressed out of your minds, and you're whispering in corners. We're your family. You have to tell us what's wrong." This is where Chris Marek's talent for manipulation allegedly went into overdrive. He stepped in front of Amy, taking control of the conversation. He put on his most charming, reassuring smile and launched into a pre-rehearsed speech. He told Zach and Tori that they were undertaking a major financial restructuring. He used complex, confusing terms like asset reallocation, tax shelters, and liquidating non-essential holdings to capitalize on a new venture. He made it sound like they were incredibly savvy business people making brilliant strategic moves. He explained that selling the heirlooms was part of a plan to move into more modern, high-yield investments. He painted a picture of such financial wizardry that he hoped it would intimidate Zach into silence. He was gaslighting his own stepson, making him feel foolish for questioning their strategy. Amy tragically just stood there, a silent partner in the deceit, too ashamed and broken to tell her own son the devastating truth. Zach left that night still suspicious but confused. The seeds of doubt now mixed with a fog of financial jargon designed to obscure the simple, ugly reality of their situation. The cover-up was holding, but the cracks were beginning to show everywhere. So, where do we go from here? What is the future for Amy Roloff, and what is the final judgment on Chris Marek? This brings us to the central question that will likely be debated by fans for years to come. Was Chris Marek a calculated con man, or was he just a profoundly incompetent and arrogant businessman? Let's examine the evidence for both theories. The case for Chris being a con man is damning. The sequence of events is highly suspicious. He creates a shell corporation, CM Developments LLC, almost immediately after Amy receives her massive payout. He convinces her to transfer millions of dollars into this brand new entity, which he alone controls. He uses what our sources have called doctored and wildly optimistic projections to sell her on a high-risk project in a market he, as a real estate professional, should have known was a minefield. And the final, most damning piece of evidence, he uses their shared home as collateral for a last-ditch loan, a detail he almost certainly obscured from Amy. This pattern of behavior does not suggest a simple mistake. It suggests a methodical plan to gain control of Amy's capital for his own high-risk gamble, insulating himself from the consequences while using her life's work as poker chips. However, there is another theory, one that paints Chris not as a monster, but as a tragic figure of his own making. The theory goes that Chris was not a con man, but a man desperate to prove his own worth. Think about his position. He married a woman who was independently wealthy and famous. Perhaps his ego couldn't handle being seen as Mr. Amy Roloff. He needed a win, a big one, to establish himself as a provider and a financial powerhouse in his own right. He saw Amy's farm money not as a treasure to be protected, but as an opportunity to hit the jackpot and elevate his own status. He wasn't trying to steal from her. He was trying to make them both phenomenally rich. He genuinely believed in the Whispering Tides project. He was blinded by his own ambition. A classic case of a man whose ego wrote checks his abilities couldn't cash. In this version of events, he is not evil but pathetic. He's a terrible, reckless businessman who made a catastrophic mistake, and he is now just as trapped in the fallout as Amy is.